Sounds good to me up here. Exodus chapter number 4. Is this one on 2? Can I move it? Is that going to hurt anything? Okay. Going to be a little bit strange maybe tonight. Might find this strange, but we're going to finish up Exodus chapter 4, and I'm just going to read through it. So we're just going to read this book tonight. Exodus, the entire book. We'll finish it up tonight. So if you would please stand. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do the whole book. We're not going to do the whole book. We're not going to do it. I am going to read chapter 4 though. You know, and I know what it's like sometimes. You know, you get up there and you're like, we're going to read the whole chapter. And you're like, golly, really, the whole thing? That sounds a whole lot better, though, when you first thought it was going to be the whole book, didn't it? Now you're like, whoo, okay, it's just a chapter. So Exodus chapter number 4. Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice. For they will say that the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. The Lord said unto him, what is in thine hand? He said, a rod. He said, cast it to the ground. He cast it to the ground, and it became a serpent. Moses fled from before it. The Lord said unto Moses, put forth thy hand. He put and take it by the tail. He put forth his hand and caught it. There came a rod in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord thy God of thy fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, hath appeared unto them. The Lord said furthermore unto him, put now thine hand into thy bosom. He put his hand into his bosom. When he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. He said, put thy hand in thy bosom again. He put it in again, plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. It shall come to pass, they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. It shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken to thy voice, thou shalt take of the water of the river and pour it on the dry land, and the water which thou takest of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither hitherto nor since have spoken unto thy servant, but I am of slow speech and tongue. Lord said to him, who hath made man's mouth? Make the dumb or the deaf, the seeing or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send. Basically what he's saying there is, I won't do it. That's pretty much what he's saying. And the anger of the Lord kindled against Moses. He said, is it not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. Thou shalt speak unto him, put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth, with his mouth, and will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. Thou shalt take this rod in thy hand with, and thou shalt do the signs. Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said unto him, let me go, I pray thee, return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. The Lord said to Moses in Midian, so we're doing a little jumping back and forth, return to Egypt, all the men are dead which sought thy life. Moses took his wife and his sons and set them upon his ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. Moses took the rod of God in his hand. Notice the name change there, now it's the rod of God. The Lord said unto Moses, when thou goest to return into Egypt, see that thou do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in thy hand, but I will harden his heart. Little thing right there, I've always heard that. Something that I read recently was, yes, he did say he would harden his heart, but he didn't say when he would harden it. Each time that I read it, I thought, wow, he did say that. You know, so whenever Pharaoh hardened his heart, you know, when he hardened Pharaoh's heart, did he give him a chance? He didn't say when he was going to read it. He was going to harden it. There's times where we read into this and it says Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Just something to keep in mind, a little thing that I read actually earlier. But I will harden his heart, he shall not let the people go. Thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. If thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. And it came to pass, by the way in the inn, that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So let me go to him. Then said, A bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision. Very strange right there, ain't it? How that just jumps in there. We're going to look at that here in a little bit. Very strange. The Lord said to Aaron, so this is almost like we're kind of back and forth in a sense. While God is talking to Moses, and he's like, your brother's coming. He's already talked to Aaron and say, Aaron, I need you to go up to this. And this is kind of what we're doing. Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the children of Israel, elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken unto Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. And all the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then bowed their heads and worshiped. What we're looking at tonight is the pattern of our calling. So we see that shows up in the call of Moses is the pattern of our calling. One of the things as I was reading through this, and some of the things that I think probably gives me maybe some of the, thought-provoking things, is things that are not in there, right? So I'm thinking about this, I'm like, man, how did Moses get to hear what's all going on in his life and stuff? Of course, we know, we're not going to go through all that. But I'm like, so Moses comes out of Egypt, gets hooked up with Zipporah, right? And then he goes off and he's wandering, and 40 years later, this is supposedly where we are, right? So I'm like, 40 years. For 40 years. I'm thinking, I'm wondering, did Zipporah ever ask him, hey, Moses, man, you had everything that you wanted over there. You had Bugattis. You had dirt bikes. You had houses. You had GMC 2500s. You had lands. I mean, you had access to every single thing. And one moment, you just gave it all up. You just let it go. What was, and I don't know that she was accusing her. She might have just been curious. I mean, I'd be curious. She could have married a prince. Essentially, she's like, man, the what could have beens. So help me understand, why did you do this? What was going through your mind, right? And this, like I say, it ain't written down. This is the way I'm kind of working through. It's like Moses is probably just like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know why I did that. I don't know what was going through my mind. I don't know. I just seen some folks, and there was something in my heart that just pulled me to them. And I just seen how they were treated wrong. And I know that I was, to be honest with you, Zipporah, I really don't know. I don't know what was going on. What gives me kind of that thought to base that on is whenever he comes and talks to God, we'll look in a little bit, he says, what's your name? So it has to believe that he didn't have any kind of relationship, leads me to believe, that he didn't have any kind of relationship with God before that. Now, we know he was great, for about 5 years, Dad was able to put some stuff in him, but as far as he just knew that that seed was planted and there was just something in him. There was just something in him, right? And even he couldn't put his finger on it. So then we get to verse, backing up some in chapter number 3, we're going to skim through all of this. And chapter number 3, I think is so funny because this is where God makes himself known to Moses, right? And we're looking at the pattern of our calling, right? And how that we can relate to this. Because we all, if you look back at before your salvation, there'll be a time where there was like something just pricked your mind. Right, something somebody said, something, heard on TV. Could have been something that heard a preacher. You're skipping through channels, whatever, and something just hit and it just stuck with you. You're like, golly, what is that? Right? Then we get to this part of the burning bush, and the Bible there's parts of the Bible that just tickle me. There's 2 areas in this that I just feel like should have in my book. I actually wrote like a smiley face in it with a big laughing thing, because it's like in verse number 3. In 2, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see the great sight I mean, I'm just thinking, it's like, oh, wow, I think I will go check this out, you know? And I'm like, that is just so funny, because who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't be like, man, what, you know, sit back for a little bit and be looking like, but this is the time where God is revealing him, where God has drawn him. We've all had that burning bush, where we knew there was something that was inside of us. There was something that just kind of called us, right? And then you get involved into something, you know, you come to church or whatever, and then you start, you know, you're kind of learning what your gifts are. You hear teaching on the gifts, and you hear about people doing this and doing that, and then you find that thing which you're supposed to step into. Right? He's tried some other things, and this is kind of it. This is where God is revealing what he's about to do for Moses and what he's going to do with Moses. He says in 4, when the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called unto him in the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. It's funny how in my Bible, the way that the verses are, verse number 4, right across from the other page, I mean, almost in line in my Bible, here am I. And then in verse 11, who am I? He goes from hearing the voice of God to who am I? What happened in that part? In verse number 5, he said, and draw not nigh, but take your shoes off, which we heard a great lesson on that this Sunday, getting the dogs out. Love the way that was put. He said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, now this is where I'm thinking, right? I'm trying to be, you know, I'm just back and I'm just looking around from one of the rocks, and I'm just kind of visualizing, I'm seeing what's going on, right? And it's like, and I'm also got myself in Moses' shoe, and I'm trying not to, or sandals, well, maybe he didn't have none on, maybe we're just standing there barefoot, but you know what I'm saying? So, and I'm just trying to, I'm trying to not put the end in here, because I know how it's going to go, and I'm trying to just read it, and I'm trying to just, what's the atmosphere, what's going on in his mind, you know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, you know, if it was me, I'd be like, God, this is awesome, man. And this is so much like our salvation, our calling experience. We get this voice, we have this opportunity, we have this burning bush experience, and God puts something in our hearts, right? And he's telling Moses, he's like, I'm going to bring my people out, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to bring them right back here. They're going to worship, and it's going to be fantastic. And I can't help but believe Moses is like, man, I'm down with that. Put my hat in. Let's roll. And he says, you're the man going to do it. And he said, negative. You got the wrong guy. Because he goes from here I am to who am I. He hears the plan, and he's all down with the plan. But when he finds out he's going to be the leader of the plan, then it's like, no, no, you got the wrong dude. Thus, this is where begins our excuses, even within our own lives, our excuses. Where we find out, we see people are doing great things, we see things are moving for God, we see people are doing great works, we hear about the blessings, we hear about the life change, and we have that draw. It's like, I really want to be a part of that. I really want to be a part of that. And then God lays something on it. It's like, well, I just don't know if I want to be that much a part of it. And we begin throwing up excuses, don't we? Don't we? We say, okay, I can't do that. You know, here's what happens. You know, the kids are playing ball, and we're doing this all the time. You know, we've got this going on the side, or I'm a part of this club, or I'm a part of this group, and I can't give up. You know what I'm saying? And then time goes on, it keeps hitting you, and it keeps hitting you, and it keeps hitting you. You're like, man, something's got to give. Something's got to give. We get to that crossroads to where you either make a decision that you're going to do it, or you run the risk of God picking somebody else and you not being a part of it. I believe that can happen. I believe that there's some men that God has called, Moses, Jonah. There's other men that God has put his finger and said, you ain't running, I'm using you, right? I'm using humans. Why did God not just show up in Egypt? Why didn't he just go in and just gather everybody up? But he chose to use a human. Does that not give you hope? Doesn't that give you help to know? He knew what Moses was. He knew the questions Moses was going to. He knew all of this stuff, yet he chose to use Moses. That gives me hope. That gives me hope whenever I look down. We're going to look at some other things that's going to give us some great hope too. But just moving on. Let's chase that rabbit good. In verse number 9, he says, therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is coming to me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, and I will send thee that thou mayest bring forth thy people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses, where Moses says, who am I that I should go? That's the first thing he says is, I'm not worthy. First thing we say, God puts something on our heart, regardless of what it is, I can't do that. I am not worthy. There's no way that these people are going to listen to me. He says in 12, certainly I will be with thee. Didn't give him any kind of, I know you're not worthy. Didn't, come in and help him. He just says, I'm going to be with you, Moses. He said, I will be with you. Then Moses asks the question that I think, to me it was a little curious. When he asked him, he's like, who are you? And as I'm thinking about Moses, once again, I'm trying to put my mind in. I'm trying not to know the end from the beginning and stuff. And I'm like, Moses spent 40 years in Egypt, and then he spent 40 years kind of wandering around. So the only really gods you could say that he knows were those of Egypt, right? Now he knows all the gods of Egypt. He knows all the ones. The 10 plagues attack every one of them. And he's probably wondering through his mind, it's like, man, I heard you with this Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I understand, but what's your name? We got a name for everyone. We got a name for thousands of them. What's your name? Who are you? And he says, I am that I am. One of the greatest one. I remember hearing that for the first time. Because I remember just thinking, I am that I am. I am what? Fill it in. Just feel it. Just imagine that that's a blank. What are you? I am your comforter. I am your help. I am your rock. I am the one that knows you. I am the one that sees the dogs and still calls you. I am that one. That's who I am. God, it was great. I remember whenever that landed. He says in verse number, and moving over to chapter number 4 and verse 1, because what he does, God goes on. And then I love in verse number 17, he says, and have I not said, have I said that I will bring him? I've already said, I've already told you, this is what is going to happen. And God's given him such great grace here. He gives us such great grace. Whenever we go to question, when we go to throw up our little excuses or how our timeline does not fit his timeline, how that he thinks that there's more in us than what we think is in us, how we begin to be like, okay, God, I know. But see, God, I know you know everything. And I know, God, you don't. Listen, I'm checking on that. But let me show you some faults in your plan. Okay, let me just show you where this is not going to work out well, right? That's what I do. That's immediately what I do, right? Experience is a two-edged sword as well, ain't it? Because experience is what gives us, the wisdom to not do some things, right? To not act crazy, not jump on a dirt bike and try to jump a triple. Gives us wisdom, to not go sled, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you gain that wisdom, but also that wisdom, when we look back on it, it can also hinder us because now we want to try to find all the pitfalls and everything. While that's good for a lot of business, it's kind of tough in a spiritual walk, right? Because we want all the pieces to line up and we want to be able to see all the pieces and put them together of how this is going to fit together and how this is going to work. Where if you were in here and you talk to anybody that's been saved for any amount of time, they've seen God work in their lives, they will tell you, you've never got all the pieces. It was always just this, and then this, and then this. One foot in front of the other each time. Trying to feel for God and see and make sure when you take that step, you're like, okay, God, I've done what I think you did. And then somebody comes up to you and they say something and they offer that confirmation, or, something happens at work and you get that little touch and you get that and you're like, wow, this is okay. Maybe we're on the right track. Don't you appreciate that? Even when it's in your own language, it's something somebody else could say or somebody could say, it wouldn't make no difference to you if you heard it in any other way or life, right? But that spoke to you and you're like, yes. Thank you. I mean, it's almost like he just reaches down and he just gives you one of them, right? He just pats you a little bit on the head. It's like, I got that. Come on, I got you, right? Is that not great when he does that? Moses answered and said in 4, they will not hearken to me. They ain't going to listen, God. I'm just telling you, I know these folks. I've heard about them. I was there around them. I seen them. They are not going to listen to me. And that's when God says, listen, I'm going to do some stuff, okay? And I want to show you something. It's like, Moses, what you got in your hand right there? And I have to believe, that Moses, the whole time, probably God's doing that, and Moses got this rod, and he's probably, he's just giving it this, and maybe he's, kind of getting at this as he's leaning and he's thinking, he's like, man, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. You know what I mean? He's been messing with these sheep, and God said, listen, boy, what's in your hand? He said, this is my rod. What's he asking? What is God asking him essentially? He tells him, throw it down. And I think that's the funny thing too, because it says Moses fled. It's like in my mind, I see like this cartoon of him throwing it down. We see the snake, and then you turn around, and you just see like this dust trail go running off. That's how I see that. And it says Moses fled. I said, well, I guess he did, What he's telling Moses when it comes to that rod, he's like, what's in your hand? What are you using? Where are you at right now? What is that for? Because we want to put things, we want to see what's 5 years down the road, what's 10 years down the road. And God says, what's in your hand right now? Where are you right now? What are you in right now? Because I can use you in what you're doing right now, where you are right now. Don't worry about next week. Don't worry about 3 months down the road. Don't worry about, I'll give you that when we get there. Where are you right now? What can you change about it right now? Hear that? We hear this stuff all the time, back in this day and back in that, and when this happened and messed this up last week or done this, or we lost this because of this happened, I understand, but what about right now? What you going to do now? One of the things that I kind of adopted, and I tried to teach into my son, because I didn't hear it till later on, was, when you mess up, when you get upset, when you get frustrated, you get 5 minutes. You can rant, rave, you can beat something down, you can kick, you know what I'm saying? Just to be sure whatever you mess up, you got to pay for a repair. Let's not get crazy. But after that, now what are you going to do? Can't go back, can't do anything. What's next? How are you going to do? What are you going to do next? Let's move forward. Let's not wallow in the past. Those were not the good old days that we often try to refer to too. If you're breathing, the good old days are still in front of us. There's still works to be done. There's still lives to be changed. There's still inside of us. If nothing else, for the glory of God, it's inside of us. What is God teaching us? And there's a guy that I work with that role models that so very well for me. Each time he come in, and I'll be like, man, how are you doing this? How are you putting up with this? There's people saying this and this and, dealing with this. And it's like, I just see it as holes in the armor. And this is what God's trying to do, is show me where my holes are. It's like, man, I don't even know that I got armor, if that's the case. It's more like one of those chainmail suits, because there's a hole all in my stuff, man. But I love the way you looked at it. It really helped me, caused me to focus on things different. When struggles come in, when things come in and they rub me wrong, or I don't like it, I don't like the way they say it, and I find myself being in that little offense circle where I'll get offended real quick. Man, hold on. Let me step back and analyze it. What is going on? What's he showing me? What's the mirror showing me? What do I fix about me? How do I fix me? How does this work on me? So Moses is going on, and he says, what's in your hand? He said, I'm going to use what's in your hand. I'm going to use what you're doing where you are right now. He takes his hand, he puts it in, pulls it back out, and it becomes leprous, and he puts it back in, it comes back out. And from what I'm seeing, in me, as I read through this, he says, I'm going to use what's in your hand, and I'm going to use what's inside of you. I want you to see that both of these things can be used for evil. See, he turned it into a serpent, right? And that serpent, going back into Genesis, it had that thoughts of being evil. That leprous, somebody had leprosy, they were thought of to be evil, right? For me, what I'm pulling out of this is that what's in your hand and what's inside of you can be used for good or it can be used for evil. Which one are we going to use it for? Which one you want to use it for? Take it right now. The one other thing was the latter sign, and this was something that as I was reading through, so many of the commentaries was talking about he didn't do that, when he goes over to the children of Israel at the end of this, performs the signs, wonders, miracles, he tells everybody about everything, that he didn't do this miracle, which is true. But from the way that I'm reading it right here, he didn't do it here either. He said, here's what you're going to do. First two signs, what we see in these first two signs is transformation, right? It was good. Put it in, threw it down, turned into something evil, pulled it back in, picked it back up, turned back. There was a transformation that went on. In the last sign, there was no transformation that returned that water back to good when he tells him about it. Even when we see it later on, that transformation doesn't come back. That was the sign of the judgment. We go on, and it says in verse number 10, Moses says unto the Lord, I'm not eloquent. I can't talk, right? We do the same things. God's got us, we're wrestling with Him, been wrestling with Him for a few weeks. Try to sleep at night. You know what I'm saying? The first thing that comes in your mind is what God wants you to do. And you're like, God, I don't want to do it. I want to do some cool stuff, man. Why can't they call a missionary to Hawaii? Why the missionaries always got to be off some, far off crazy place where you got to learn another language and all this stuff? Don't they need missionaries in Hawaii? I want to go to Hawaii, right? Seemed like it'd be tough drawing support for that one, though, But we want to argue and say, man, I go, okay, God, okay, cool. But what am I supposed to tell him? I don't even know what to say. A couple of Saturdays ago was the first time that I come up here and met with the Table of Grace, right? And Joe said, we're going to put you in the fire. You're going to go with them out. You ain't going to stay here. You're going to go with them out. And you're going to see what it looks like for these folks to come up. And I remember thinking, I don't know, what am I going to say? What do you say to these people? And I was telling others later on, I was like, never in my life did I ever feel like prayer was so insufficient. Because here are these people that have literally, listen, it's cold, and I just want to be honest with you, just straight up, it was cold. I didn't dress appropriately to be out into the cold. And I remember thinking, man, it is cold. The playoffs are on. I can go home and lay on the couch. I can adjust the thermostat from my phone, and that's where I want to be. I just remember that thought going through my mind, right? And I'm thinking, that tore up, nasty sleeping bag, that is the couch. That place in the corner where they're trying to hide because the wind was blowing and it was so stinking cold that's where they're going to be. And I'm just like, God, it messed me up. It has messed me up some because it's me trying to how do I fit into this? How do I get into this and not just sell off everything that I have and give it to them? How do I get into this and still provide for my family? What does this, and I'm still racing. I'll just be honest, I ain't got that figured out. I don't know, I hope you wasn't expecting, here's how I did it, because I ain't got it yet. I don't know what that's going to look like. I genuinely don't know what that's going to look like. But I know I've got off into something that has tore me up. They was doing a thing this past week where some churches within our community opened their doors and was housing because it was so cold, week before last. So they was opening up, and I went with some of those guys, and I had some experiences that blew my mind. On both sides of it. From the first part of it that was just like wonderful and really got to talk to a guy, to the next part of it where it's like I should not have picked them up. I'm just being honest, right? There was some personal protection within that where I'm learning some, I'm finding my way. But that's the thing of where God says, listen, you ain't got to have everything figured out. Just step out. Just step out. I know give yourself some grace. I know you're going to mess some stuff up. I know you're going to have to find your footing. I know you're not going to have exactly what you want to say the first time. I got that. I know you. But I need you to step. All I need you to do is just step. I'll take it over. Me and you will go through this, but you got to step. You got to step. We'll get into a strange portion now where it says that the angel of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And this is finally at the part of where Moses has said, listen, I ain't got nothing else. You done answered all the stuff. You done showed me what you're going to do. I've seen the mirror, I've seen the wonders and stuff. I got that. But I need you to I just don't want to do it. I'll just be honest with you, I just don't want to do it. And that's when his anger, you notice that? Through all the other stuff, man, God didn't get upset. God didn't get mad. It was until he said, I'm just not willing. That's when the anger got kindled. And I'm wondering, I'm going to speed through some of this. And I'm wondering, when he says, listen, here comes Aaron. He can talk. You're going to talk through him. He's going to talk. I'll work this thing out, right? And I can't help but wonder, as they get through these things, there's some, if whenever Moses is pinning this down, right? Because we've got to remember, Moses already knows all this, so now he's going back and he's writing this down. And he's like, man, that Aaron really jacked me up. I should have done this on my own. Brother was making calves, golden calves. Remember when he come out and done that? And then he lied about it, said the thing just showed up. Then he tried to have almost had a mutiny. Him and his sister brought this money. And I was going to wonder if Moses was pinning it. It's like, boy, here's where I really missed it at right here, right?
You go on, and then Moses goes to Jethro. He's like, listen, man, I need to get my crew, and we got to go, right? I think that shows respect. It shows honor to his elders. And for us, there's some things like even within our own homes and with our employers to show that honor and respect. But one of the things that I think it also shows is you ain't got to tell everybody everything. From what we understand, he didn't tell Jethro everything that went on. He told Aaron, he told the elders of the children of Israel, he told those that needed to know, but he didn't tell everybody. There's some things that you got to keep to your heart. There's some things you got to keep in yourself, right? And you just kind of feel those that need to know. When you get in front of those, when you get around those that's in the table of grace, they're slinging biscuits or, whatever that it is, any kind of the ministry that it is, you get in that, and you start revealing things, who you can talk to, and you know what I'm saying? You're trying to find your footing and trying to find your way, right? That's what was going on with Moses. But I was also wondering whenever I'm reading this, and I'm wondering if whenever Moses was penning this stuff down, if it was in his mind of the plagues of the Red Sea, of the glory of God in the pillar of the cloud, of the manna, the quail, the rock that he would smite, the bronze serpent that he would raise, the commandments he would receive then give, the battles won, the times that God would counsel him on leading his people, the instructions that he would pass for the Levites and for the temple, for the feast, that all of these things, you got to wonder, as he's going back and he's writing this stuff down. And you got to wonder if there wasn't some part of the original parchment, if there wasn't some tears that fell on that, like, man, if I could have just knew then what I know now. He's writing this stuff down, and we're trying to gain from this, and we're trying to understand from the examples of others. Tell me, what is it? From those folks that's been walking with God for a while, and they come up behind somebody's like, man, you really probably should try this or not try that, or how about doing this, or how about reading this book, or how about checking out this commentary, and it's trying to bring you into that place of like, man, I'm trying to bleed into you what I know now, and how that could have helped you right now where you are. If I knew where you are, what I know, man, how much different it would have been. Another thing that struck me was, if you'll notice that each time whenever God introduces himself, he said, I'm the God of Abraham, I'm the God of Isaac, and I'm the God of Jacob. Right? Doesn't that, do you pick anything out in that just seems strange? Each time we read that, it seems strange. See, we've probably heard it so many times that just to say the God of Jacob to us, that's just what it is, right? But Jacob was the one that got his name changed. Okay? So there's like, man, what? Man. So Abraham was a covenant. Okay, got that. Isaac is a promised son. Okay, I got that. Jacob was the deceiver. Boy, it just don't seem to land. When you're introducing, and see, he's introducing himself to Moses. If you were introducing yourself, wouldn't you introduce yourself as the one who had their name changed? I'm the one of that guy. I'm the one of Israel, the children, the people, the promise, my firstborn son. Is that not who you would introduce yourself as? Would you introduce yourself as the God of the supplanter, the deceiver? What are they hearing when they hear the God of Jacob? They're hearing, I'm the God of your defeats. I'm the God of your scars. I'm the God of the person that whenever you come to me, you try to hide. I'm the God that redeems you. I'm the God that sees all the warts, that sees the dogs in all their nastiness. When they hear the God of Jacob, that's what they're thinking. I'm the God of all of that you wish you could hide. When you bring to me, I know that, and I'm still asking you to come. Nothing is hidden. This is all in ourselves. This is such a beautiful pattern of how we argue, and God continues to work, and in his grace, when we take that step, how that he uses us. How that he uses us. I thank God for that. Thank God for the opportunity. Thank you, Sean, for allowing me to stand up here. That's all I have, sir. Amen.